dad's like against the wall.
And look, your mom's finding all of them.
Yeah, and like they're falling over each other.
I think those are the times sometimes you keep it in the front garden.
And your dad is like flat out on the grass on our driveway. My dad's flat out on the hood of a car.
Like, where are we? I want it. Like, do we?
We were inside complaining.
We've done some of those things. Or Denda, maybe Denda. Someone's watching us. Because look, yes, I miss him. I miss my father, but Denda is like, you know, it was tough on us, but he was awesome.
Voila. Should. They better now.
It's very important that she can hear the ceremony show these are mine. She's got it.
Who's up after you?
You. It says
if we go with this, it's you.
And then Donna?
Well, no, then the priest.
Okay, so you're just going to say who
Oh, no,
goes up.
actually, is the priest here? Svechnik here?
Not yet.
Okay, so then I'll get Donna.
Yeah.
Hello. Do widzenia? No, hello. Dobar dan. I'm losing myself. Okay, dobar dan, naši Hrvati, and hello to all our English-speaking friends. I'm Kathy, depending on when you met me, Kathy, Keti, Katarina. So I'm the third daughter. And first, I'd like to start by welcoming everybody today. Thank you for coming. COVID has kept many people away from fear or sickness, and I'm happy that we are happy that you're all well enough to be here and brave enough as well. So I will lead our ceremonies. We're going to try and do the best we can to honor our dad, Mom's husband, grandfather, and so we've got a bunch of people saying something, and if you feel at some point you'd like to add to the words that are shared here, I will invite you to do so at some later time in the service. So I will start with an opening, and my sister Nina is going to read a poem.
The poem's called God Looked Around His Garden. God looked around his garden and found an empty place. He then looked down upon the earth and saw your tired face. He put his arms around you and lifted you to rest. God's garden must be beautiful because he only takes the best. He knew that you were suffering. He knew you were in pain. He knew you could never get well on earth again. He saw the road was getting rough and the hills were hard to climb. So he closed your weary eyelids and said, "Peace be thine." It broke our hearts to lose you, but you didn't go alone. For part of us went with you the day God called you home.
That was quite beautiful. Our lovely cousin Donna, she is one of our strongest Croatian readers in the Jolic family. So she's going to read a very short little poem. Not a poem, it's a reading from the Bible. Okay.
Čitanje svetog apostola Ivana. Ostavljam vam dar, mir uma i srca, a mir koji dajem je dar koji svijet ne može dati. Stoga nemojte biti uznemireni ili uplašeni. A reading from John 14:27. I am leaving you with a gift, peace of mind and heart. And the peace I give is a gift the world cannot give. So don't be troubled or afraid.
I failed to mention for any of our English friends, we have a Croatian background, if you didn't know. So the language you're hearing is Croatian. We're blessed to have Svečanik, Božidan, Svečanik Božidan, who was there with Dad to give him his blessings in the hospital. And Tata was so thrilled at a point in time where he was in and out of consciousness when the Svečanik came Tata was aware, and he was participating in the last rites, and that was incredible how happy he was to see Svećenik Božji Dan. And Svećenik Božji Dan was a beautiful spirit when he walked into the room. It was actually, he carried the Spirit of God in the room with him, so we're happy to have him here.
U ime Otca i Sina i Duha Svetoga. Amen. Ostanite sjediti, ostanite sjediti. Poštovane obitelji, draga braća i sestre, danas smo se ovdje okupili kako bismo odali počast vašem suprugu, vašem ocu, vašem djedu, našem poznaniku, članu naše hrvatske zajednice, dragom prijatelju, kojega ste ili kojega smo mnogi voljeli, ali od kojega se s ljubavlju danas opraštamo kako bismo njegovu dušu preporučili dragome Bogu. Ovaj dan tuge i žalosti, jer smrt je uvijek tuga i tužni smo kad nam neko drag odlazi, želimo se okupiti ovdje i ispovijediti svoju vjeru da ovo nije svršetak, ovo nije kraj. Naš je Bog, Bog živih. Ujedno želim danas vama, poštovane obitelji, iskazati svoju sućut i donijeti utjehu vjere, to isto vrijeme za vas Bogu uputiti molitve, da se ojača vaša nada i okrijepi vjera u Kristovu vazmenu pobjedu i uskrsnuće mrtvih. Let us pray. Father, we entrust our brother Ivo to your mercy. You loved him greatly in this life. Now that he is freed from all its cares, give him happiness and peace forever. The old order has passed away. Welcome him now into paradise, where there will be no more sorrow, no more weeping or pain, but only peace and joy with Jesus, your Son, and the Holy Spirit forever and ever. Amen. Sada ćemo čuti riječi Svetoga pisma koje upućujemo i koje prikazujemo danas za vašeg dragog pokojnika i koje nas tješe u našem opraštaju od njega. Čitanje knjige proroka Izaije. U onaj dan Gospodin nad vojskama spremit će svim narodima na ovoj gori gozbod pretiline. Na ovoj gori on će raskinuti zastor što zastiraše sve narode. Pokrivač koji sva plemena pokrivaše i uništit će smrt za svagda. I suzu će sa svakog lica Gospodin Bog otrti. I reći će se onaj dan, gle, ovo je Bog naš, u njega se uzdasmo, on nas je spasio. Ovo je Gospodin u koga se uzdasmo. Kličimo i veselimo se u spasenju njegovu. Riječ Gospodnja. Bogu hvala. Ponavljat ćemo riječi, pa da mi je dolino smrti proći, zla se ne bojim, jer ti si sa mnom. Pa da mi je dolino smrti proći, zla se ne bojim, jer ti si sa mnom. Gospodine pastir moj, ni u čem ja ne oskudjevam, na poljanama zelenim on mi daje odmora. Pa da mi je dolino smrti proći, zla se ne bojim, jer ti si sa mnom. Na vrutke me tihane vodi i krijepi dušu moju. Stazama pravim on me upravlja radi imena svojega. Pa da mi je dolino smrti proći, zla se ne bojim, jer ti si sa mnom. Trpezu predanom prostireš na oči dušmanima mojim. Ulje mi glavu mažeš, čaša se moja prelijeva. Pa da mi je dolino smrti proći, zla se ne bojim, jer ti si sa mnom. Aleluja. Blaženi mrtvi koji umiru u Gospodinu, neka odpočinu od svojih trudova, jer prate ih djela njihova. Aleluja. Gospodin s vama i s duhom tvojim. Navještaj svetog evanđelja po Ivanu. Slava tebi, Gospodine. U ono vrijeme reče Isus svojim učenicima, došao je čas da se proslavi Sin čovječi. Zaista, kaže vam, ako pšenično zrno, pavši na zemlju, ne umre, ostaje samo. Ako li umre, donosi obilat rod. Ko ljubi svoj život, izgubit će ga, a tko mrzi svoj život na ovome svijetu, sačuvat će ga za život vječni. Ako mi tko hoće služiti, neka ide za mnom. I gdje sam ja, ondje će biti i moj služitelj. Ako mi tko hoće služiti, počastit će ga moj Otac. Riječ Gospodnja. Slava tebi, Kriste. Poštovane obitelji, još jedanput želimo u ime svoje, u ime čitave naše župne zajednice iskazati iskrenu sućut supruzi, ćerkama, unučadi, zetovima, svima koji ste danas ovdje okupljeni. Nisam imao čast poznavati vašeg supruga i oca i djeda. Upoznao sam ga i vidio u bolnici nekoliko, možemo reći, vremena prije odlaska s ovoga svijeta i završetka njegovog zemaljskog života. Ali nekako sam ovih dana pokušao se raspitati i čuti. Kada bi spomenuo ime Ivo Jolić, svi su rekli, joj pa da, znamo ga. To je Ivo Jolić. To je čovjek kojega smo susretali, koji je puno učinio za ovu hrvatsku zajednicu, koji je učinio puno za hrvatski narod, koji je u svojemu životu imao principe. Malo sam gledao i po Facebooku, jer je bio prisutan, pa sam vidio da je uvijek bio onaj koji je znao štititi i braniti ono što je dobro, što je hrvatsko, što je lijepo, što je kršćansko. To veseli nas ljude, kada ovdje toliko daleko od naše domovine Hrvatske možemo imati osobe koje su, pa evo, čitav svoj život bili spremni biti oni koji su bili stupovi, koji su znali što su principi, koji su znali što je dobro, što je lijepo, što je savršeno. Draga braće i sestre, vjerujem da će naš dragi Ivo u vječnosti susresti prije svega Isusa, kojega je vjerovao, kojemu se molio i koji ga je dočekao na kraju njegovog života. Da će susresti svoje roditelje, da će susresti svoje prijatelje, da će susresti sve one drage ljude koje je on ispraćao u vječnost. I da će taj susret biti u radosti. Mi znamo da nam je sprovod i opraštaj od naših dragih prijatelja, rođaka i rodbine uvijek tužan trenutak. Ali moramo biti svjesni da je odlazak ili susret naših dragih pokojnika u vječnosti sa Isusom Kristom radostan trenutak. I da će to biti vječno, da će to biti trajno. Želim još jedanput zahvaliti u ime čitave hrvatske zajednice i naše župne zajednice, jer nije on bio samo član ove župe, nego prije svega Toronta i svih župa koje su kasnije nastajale. Želim u ime svih članova naše hrvatske zajednice iskazati iskrenu zahvalnost i iskrenu sućut. Iskrenu zahvalnost za ono što je činio, neka ga dragi Bog nagradi za njegovo djelo, za njegova dobra djela, iskrenu sućut vama koji su svi ovdje danas prisutni. I suppose that those of these people don't speak Croatian. I will say a few words in English. Dear family, dear friends, today we are gathered here with your husband, with your father, grandfather, and friend. I know you are all very sad, and it is hard to accept the truth that is departing from him. This moment of encounter with the death of your dear deceased has brought sorrow into your lives. But that sadness will be replaced by beautiful and dear memories of him. Be happy and proud that you were able to live with him and that you can carry the memory of him in your hearts. Also, pray for him and for the eternity of his soul. What can we do today? Save all the beautiful memories in our hearts and in our souls, and wish him a joyful meeting in heaven with all his dear friends and with Jesus, who was certainly prepared one place for him as well. Life is a journey from birth to death. The greatest journey in the Old Testament was the journey from Egypt to the promised land of Canaan. For us, our promised land is not on this earth. Our promised land is heaven. The journey to the promised land in the Old Testament is a symbol of the journey each of us makes to God as we go through this life. Between our birth and our death, we are all pilgrims on the road of God, on the road to God. We are but travelers on a journey, pilgrims on a pilgrimage to God. I would like to extend my deepest condolences to all family, all relatives, and all friends, and all of you present here today. May God rest his soul. Amen. You can stand up now, please. Pomolimo se Gospodinu Isusu Kristu za crkvu Božju, da se Gospodin dostoji očuvati je i krijepiti, molimo Gospodina. Gospodine, usliši nas. Za pokojnog Ivu, koji je po krštenju jednož primio klicu vječnoga života, da mu podariš vječno zajedništvo sa svetima, molimo Gospodina. Gospodine, usliši nas. Za pokojnog Ivu, koji je blagovao tijelo Kristovo, kruh vječnoga života, da ga uskrisiš u posljednji dan, molimo Gospodina. Gospodine, usliši nas. Za duše naših roditelja i rođaka, braća i sestara i svih dobrotvora, da im udjeliš nagradu za trud, molimo te. Gospodine, usliši nas. Za našu braću i sestre, što se ovdje okupiše u vjeri i odanosti, da nas sabereš u slavno svoje kraljevstvo, molimo Gospodina. Gospodine, usliši nas. Molimo Gospodine, da naša molitva pomogne tvojim slugama i službenicama, očisti od svih grijeha i učini dionicima svoga otkupljenja po Kristu, Gospodinu našemu. Amen. I sada vas pozivam, evo, imamo dovoljno vremena, da ipak izmolimo 1/10 krunice za vašeg dragog pokojnika, da se na taj način, evo da ga na taj način preporučimo milosti Božjoj, kao što je uvijek običaj kad se naša zajednica okuplja kod ispraćaja naših dragih pokojnika, da onda to učinimo i u molitvi. Naša će molitva biti na hrvatskom jeziku, jer je Ivo taj jezik nosio u svome srcu, u tom jeziku je molio i na tom jeziku se, kao što ste i vi rekli, oprostio pred kraj svojega života od vaše obitelji i od naše zajednice. Pomoć je naša u imenu Gospodina koji je stvorio nebo i zemlju. Oče naš, koji jesi na nebesima, sveti se ime Tvoje, dođi kraljevstvo Tvoje, budi volja Tvoja, kako na nebu, tako i na zemlji. Kruh naš svagdanji daj nam danas i otpusti nam duge naše, kako i mi otpuštamo dužnicima našim, i ne uvedi nas u napast, nego izbavi nas od zla. Amen. Zdravo Marijo, milosti puna, Gospodin s tobom, blagoslovljena ti među ženama i blagoslovljen plod utrobe Tvoje, Isus. Sveta Marijo, Majko Božja, moli za nas griješnike, sada i na času smrti naše. Amen. Zdravo Marijo, milosti puna, Gospodin s tobom, blagoslovljena ti među ženama i blagoslovljen plod utrobe Tvoje, Isus. Sveta Marijo, Majko Božja, moli za nas griješnike, sada i na času smrti naše. Amen. Zdravo Marijo, milosti puna, Gospodin s tobom, blagoslovljena ti među ženama i blagoslovljen plod utrobe Tvoje, Isus. Sveta Marijo, Majko Božja, moli za nas griješnike, sada i na času smrti naše. Amen. Zdravo Marijo, milosti puna, Gospodin s tobom, blagoslovljena ti među ženama i blagoslovljen plod utrobe Tvoje, Isus. Sveta Marijo, Majko Božja, moli za nas griješnike, sada i na času smrti naše. Amen. Zdravo Marijo, milosti puna, Gospodin s tobom, blagoslovljena ti među ženama i blagoslovljen plod utrobe Tvoje, Isus. Sveta Marijo, Majko Božja, moli za nas griješnike, sada i na času smrti naše. Amen. Zdravo Marijo, milosti puna, Gospodin s tobom, blagoslovljena ti među ženama i blagoslovljen plod utrobe Tvoje, Isus. Sveta Marijo, Majko Božja, moli za nas griješnike, sada i na času smrti naše. Amen. Zdravo Marijo, milosti puna, Gospodin s tobom, blagoslovljena ti među ženama i blagoslovljen plod utrobe Tvoje, Isus. Sveta Marijo, Majko Božja, moli za nas griješnike, sada i na času smrti naše. Amen. Zdravo Marijo, milosti puna, Gospodin s tobom, blagoslovljena ti među ženama i blagoslovljen plod utrobe tvoje, Isus. Sveta Marijo, Majko Božja, moli za nas griješnike, sada i na času smrti naše. Amen. Zdravo Marijo, milosti puna, Gospodin s tobom, blagoslovljena ti među ženama i blagoslovljen plod utrobe tvoje, Isus. Sveta Marijo, Majko Božja, moli za nas griješnike, sada i na času smrti naše. Amen. Zdravo Marijo, milosti puna, Gospodin s tobom, blagoslovljena ti među ženama i blagoslovljen plod utrobe tvoje, Isus. Sveta Marijo, Majko Božja, moli za nas griješnike, sada i na času smrti naše. Amen. Slava Otcu i Sinu i Duhu Svetomu, kako bijaše na početku, tako i sada i vazda. Pokoj vječni daruj mu, Gospodine, i svjetlost vječna svjetla mu, počivao u miru Božjem. Amen. Pomolimo se. Zahvaljujemo ti, Gospodine Bože, za ovog čovjeka koji nam je bio drag i blizak, a koji nas je napustio. Zahvaljujemo ti na svem prijateljstvu, što nam je od njega poteklo, za mir koji je unosio među nas. Zahvaljujemo što se patnjom naučio hrabroj izdržljivosti i što je u mijenama ovog nestanog života zavrijedio da ga poštujemo. Molimo te, ne daj da se izgubi išta od njegovih napora, ono što je živio i činio. Neka doprinese dobrobiti ovoga svijeta. Daj da ljudi što će za njim doći cijene sve što je njemu bilo sveto, da u svem u čem je bio velik i dalje nama zbori. I sada, kada je prešao u pokoj. Molimo te da nastavi živjeti u svojoj djeci, u svojoj unučadi, u njihovim srcima i smjelosti njihova života, u njihovim mislima i savjestima. Sve nas je život s njime vezivao. Učini Bože da sada, nakon njegove smrti i zbog njegove smrti, budemo dublje međusobno povezani. Daj da u miru i prijateljstvu zajednički upoznamo tvoje obećanje, da ćeš i nama biti vjeran kada prijeđemo s ovoga svijeta. Amen. Spomeni se, Gospodine, sluge svoga Ive, kojega si s ovoga svijeta pozvao k sebi. Daj da on, koji je krštenjem urastao u smrt tvoga sina, postane dionikom i njegova uskrsnuća. Kad on, Krist, iz zemlje uskrisi mrtve i ovo naše smrtno tijelo suobliči samnome tijelu svome. Njega i sve naše pokojne, koji u tvojoj ljubavi prijeđoše s ovoga svijeta, dobrostivo primi u svoje kraljevstvo. Gledajući tebe, Boga svoga, kakav jesi, bit ćemo zauvijek tebi slični i tebe bez kraja slaviti po Kristu našem Gospodinu, po kojemu sva dobra svijetu daješ. Amen. Još jedan put iskrena sućut povodom smrti vašeg dragog supruga, oca i djeda i našeg prijatelja, člana naše zajednice, čitave obitelji i svima koji ste danas ovdje okupljeni. Once again, my sincere condolences to all family, relatives and friends here present today. Gospodin s vama. Blagoslovio vas i čuvao svemogući Bog, Otac i Sin i Duh Sveti. Amen. Ostanimo u miru. Bogu hvala.
We'd like to, at this moment, say hello to our family in Croatia that are watching on live stream. We know our two kids, Paulina and Nicole, they're in California, and they couldn't make it because of their obligations there. So we're waving hello to them and telling you we love you and we know you're here with us. So that was lovely. I hope you got some of the English translation and the Croatian of the priest. Thank you. Right now, I'd like to invite Jordan, my second son, Dave, and my second son. He wrote something for Deda, his Deda, that he's going to share.
I think I speak for many of us when I say it this past week has been difficult to process. It's hard to think that Deda, the man of science, the man of faith, the teacher, the always loving grandfather, the proud, unstoppable force that he was, could come to pass. While it was unusual to see him in pain, or more so to hear that he was in pain, the way that Deda fought for his life was a testament to everything that we respected about him. There were no half measures. His battle was relentless. After his stroke, he worked with my mom to bring his movement back. After catching COVID, he clung to his life and managed to recover from that against all odds. He fought with dignity. When I came to visit in December, I expected to see him at the end. In a way, I began to grieve then, but instead, to my surprise, my visit to the hospital was watching him exercise with my mom while he lectured about history. In classic Deda fashion, he was always learning, always teaching, the professor and the student. But this visit was different because in this lecture there was a softness. There's a gentle reflection on how much he loved his country, his knowledge of history, geography, and language, and a stronger reflection on how much he loved Baka and her resilience, her spirit, and her ability to hold his life together. And I'm so happy I got to just see that in him, hear that from him. It was the second time I remember seeing Deda emotional in this way. The first was when he recalled the story of his childhood during the war, the horrific journey that he took northwards towards Vinkovci. There was, of course, pain in this story, and there was pain in his voice now. Deda has been through so much, but his attitude has always been that there is more to come. I think he struggled coming to terms with the fact that his life was finally coming to an end because he still had more to learn, more to share, and more love to give, and relationships to build. He's passed now, but I think his time on earth, what he achieved, how he achieved it, and most importantly, what he hoped to achieve, has given me, and I hope others, the most profound lesson one could hope to learn from a grandfather. Deda, I love you, love you, love you.
These darn masks. Okay. Okay, next we're going to have Matthew, our eldest sister Bless's son, read something, a poem.
The poem is titled, As We Look Back. As we look back over time, we find ourselves wondering, did we remember to thank you enough for all you have done for us, for all the times you were by our sides to help and support us, to celebrate our successes, to understand our problems, and accept our defeats, or for teaching us by your example the value of hard work, judgment, courage, and integrity. We wonder if we ever thanked you for the sacrifices you made, to let us have the very best, and for the simple things like laughter, smiles, and the times we shared. If we have forgotten to show our gratitude enough for all the things you did, we're thanking you now, and we're hoping you knew all along how much you meant to us.
Thanks, Matt. You held it together. Good job. next is our sister Phil, our youngest sister Phil. There are three of us that are 2 years apart, and then Phil's 7 years behind us, so she's the young'un. And so Phil's going to read some poetry.
So we were going through my dad's things from the hospital. My sisters found these poems, am I correct, in his papers. So I guess when my dad was sitting there struggling in bed, you know, he didn't want a tablet. We asked him, Dad, do you want a tablet? Do you want something? He's like, no, I want to relax my brain and I don't want any negativity, he would say in the hospital. So my sisters gave him some paper and some pens. And so here's a poem that he wrote to my mom. He wrote 2 of them. They're in Croatian. They have been translated here, so if you want to take a read of them after in English, they're there. So the first one is called Moja draga žena. Ti si moja Ti si moja violina o kojoj ja kažem svima. Sjedim u miru i zbrajam dane, kad će opet naša ljubav da ponovo svane. Gledam kroz prozor i brojim lišće, a nešto me u srcu stišće. Moja violina mene čeka, kad ću doći iz bolnice da slavimo život skupa sa našom djecom i da veselimo životu kao nekad u mlade dane i taj osjećaj nikad ne stane. Ja pišem zbog svoje bolesti i muke, ali mene čuva moja žena, draga žena, njezina vjera, ljubav i njezine vredne i zdrave ruke. Moja je žena puno ljubavi i volje da nama svima bude u životu bolje. Imam ženu i 4 djece. To su svi moje drage cvijeće. Oni me čuvaju od vjetra i od bure. Život je pun zla i slabih dana, ali uz moju ženu, moja familija nema problema. That was the first one. The second one is called To My Dear Wife, Dragoj ženi. Pišem tebi da znaš da ti meni pripadaš. Ti si moja i naša lijepa zdrava mama i zato je ljepši svaki dan svima nama. Zato nas sve ne boli glava. Tvoje i moje cure su ljetne cvijeće koje su nam doneli puno sreće. Budi nam naša djevo, vesela i živa. Život nije lagan, ali ti nisi zato ništa kriva. Ja te volim svaki dan i tako ispunjavam svoj davni san. Lišće, lista, cvijeće, cveta. Ja imam ženu vrijedna ko pola svijeta. Zdrava, vrijedna, puno ljubavi, brani naš dom i djecu od svijeta. Hvala, tata, for your beautiful words. And once again, we love you.
I'm sure that Tata is listening right now and is absolutely loving this music. So thank you, guys. So beautiful. At this time, I'm wondering if anybody would like to come up. This is the time to come up and say something. Okay. And you'll introduce yourself, Ivica.
Slavimo život jednoga časnoga Hrvata. My name is John Muhar. Ja sam inače Hrvat iz Like. Ivo Jolic, my good friend and colleague in the Croatian community, who had aspirations that his homeland would be free and happy, like every other nation on this planet deserves, like the Ukrainian people now deserve to be happy and free. This is the mind of Ivo Jolic. This is the mind that Ivo Jolic saw in me. I was a mini-me. I was a wannabe Ivo Jolic. Ivo Jolic was a Croatian patriot who loved Croatia so much, was grateful for his Canadian homeland that he now moved and developed a business in and grew a family in, but he never forgot Croatia. Never. Much like myself, I am a mini-me of Ivo Jolic. I'm proud to say that Ivo Jolic was a very good friend of mine, a like-minded Croatian patriot who once told me, this can't end with us. This caring, this desire to further our cause, the cause of freedom and happiness and democracy for our people. Someone from your generation should care. And somehow I decided there should be more people from my generation that cares. He inspired me. Ivo Jolic inspired me to care because I saw how much he cared. That love, you cannot explain, the love for family, the love for a wife that he wrote poetry to, the love for his children. As a former president of Toronto, Croatia Soccer Club, I was egged on by Ivo Jolic to be involved. I found myself 1 year prior to becoming president of Toronto, Croatia Soccer Club, I found myself in the Odbor, in the committee for the young people of the younger generation to receive the baton that Ivo Jolic and his colleagues would pass the baton to, for us to lead, for us to be leaders. Next thing I knew, Ivo Jolic was patting me on the back. Ti ćeš biti sljedeći predsjednik Toronto, Croatia. So, this was the kind of man Ivo Jolic was. We are so grateful. I want to thank him as a former president of Toronto, Croatia Soccer Club. Ivo Jolic would be very proud that we mention Toronto, Croatia Soccer Club. Ivo Jolic was not only a political-minded person, but a sports enthusiast and found a way to marry all aspects of life. He lived and he showed us what it means to live a life. He found and he pursued many things. He was a person who found knowledge interesting. He was a person who felt that we should absorb like sponges everything that was in this life to absorb, including, I saw him, was that him there on the parasailing? Oh my God, that's him. That's Ivo Jolic. Ivo Jolic was an incredible man. I think, first of all, on behalf of the Croatian community, u ime kanadske zajednice, u ime kanadske hrvatske zajednice, ja bi se želio zahvaliti, ako niko drugi nije se zahvalio, ja kao jedan relativno aktivan Hrvat u Kanadi želim se zahvaliti Ivi Joliću na sve što je on i njegov naraštaj radio, da je uspostavio i utemeljio hrvatski identitet, iako tako bolno, daleko od svoje domovine koju je volio iznad svega, ali je ipak znao da mi Hrvati se moramo organizirati, da se moramo toliko ljubavi pokazati ne samo sebi i onima koji nas gledaju, nego sljedećim naraštajima, nego našoj djeci, našim unucima, da ta ljubav za domovinu, ta ljubav za Hrvatsku, ta ljubav za našu tradiciju, za sve ono što je naše, što je dobro, da se to ne zaboravi i da se to slijedi. So Ivo Jolic was a man who was in the moment, lived his life in the moment, but thought for the future, how his family would live, how his family would be happy, how our Croatian community would live and be happy, not only here in Canada, where we set up and established a new life and where we laid roots in Canada as a Croatian community, but his love always gravitated back, prayed and hoped that the love that he had for the Croatian community in Canada, that we would succeed, would also be an example for a multi-partied democracy, free country that eventually ended up being that which it aspired to be. All of that was Ivo Jolic's intentions. All of that was his influence. I'm so grateful that I had a chance to meet him, and God bless him. Dragi Ivo Jolic, moj dragi prijatelju, počivao u miru, dragi moj hrvatski brate. Puno te volimo i zahvalni smo da si ti bio dio našega života. Živio ti u nebu sa dragim Bogom i živila, ko što bi ti volio da ja sada kažem, živila naša draga domovina Hrvatska. Bog.
That was perfect. That was just perfect. It's exactly what I won't be able to relay in my words when I talk about Dad, because that passion about the politics needs to be expressed by someone who lived it as an adult, well, youth adult, side by side. So next, you know what, I'm going to get the tamburashi to play again because I'm missing my printout. So if you can give me a second, so, no, I need my dad, yeah, my notes. Okay, so if you can play, I'm just gonna find them. I'll try to speak more clearly in the mics so you can hear me. So I want to tell you a story about the life of my dad. Of course, it's impossible to tell you all the stories that went into the making of a soul, never mind a formidable soul, a force of nature that was my dad. You've heard some of it already. If you met him, I don't need to tell you. He was a force, a definite force in the making. But I'll share a few stories so that you have a few ideas of the ingredients that went into making this great man. Born in 1936, a child of World War II, like most other children of the war, his life started in a very stressful environment. Dad was the third of 5 surviving children, born in a tiny village, which you would have seen in the photos, in the spectacular foothills of Bosnia and Herzegovina. He worked their garden lot alongside his family and community. They ate what they sowed, they drank the milk of their goats, took the grains to the local mills for their breads. They were the OG of organic farming. I come by it, honestly. Maybe because he lived in such a blessed natural environment, eating the healthiest foods, breathing the greenery around him, he had an incredible mind with great curiosity, from science to philosophy, and developed a love of learning. Dad was one of those kids that really did walk 7 kilometers to school, even in winds that would push him back, torrential rains, deep snow, and blistering sun. And as we who were around him often heard again and again, he was the best student ever. Always top of his class, teaching other students, even teaching the teachers at times. The schools couldn't stock the library with enough books to keep up with his appetite for knowledge. He studied forestry engineering, a key industry in Croatia at the time, and was the youngest graduate to date. His thirst for knowledge continued throughout his life, and it was expected from the time that we were born, his 4 girls, that we too would go to university. In our minds, there was no other path after high school than post-secondary education. It was probably in those foothills that Dad developed his deep love of nature. He was so connected to the land and trees that as soon as he could, he went seeking a property in the country for his own young family shortly after we settled into Canada. We left West Toronto in the comfort and proximity to his parents and brothers and moved to 10 acres in Oakville in 1973. There, we cultivated a massive garden that we shared with family and friends. I still remember the aromatic smell of real tomatoes on the vine and the tartness of green peppers. In 1987, he happened upon a lakefront property for sale in Muskoka. It was a perfect building project on the go, where he and Mom could invite friends and family often, and balance a heavy work schedule with movement, joy, and laughter. Dad was a big fan of work-life balance. He very much lived the work hard, do other things passionately life. Early in his career in Croatia, it's no surprise he quickly became a foreman in the wood cabinet manufacturing companies. But he always desired to be his own boss and not be under the mighty hand of the communist government. So without prior knowledge or training, he came across the idea to start his own aluminum installation company and named it Ontario Siding. With a new baby and 3 young daughters to support, he and Mom worked together to build this successful company and managed it for 30-plus years. All the while, Dad passionately supported the Croatian community in many, many roles that you heard mentioned, including secretary and president of various Croatian Canadian political organizations, the Toronto Soccer Club, and held a weekly radio program providing commentary on the ever-rifled political situation in Croatia. He loved, and his love and passion for the freedom of Croatia was so deep and strong that when he retired, he and Mom sold the cottage and he set off to Croatia to start an honest and transparent political party for the upcoming elections. There was a lot of interest, but being a Canadian national for so many years, people were naturally skeptics. In the meantime, and simultaneously, he started another building project on the beautiful Adriatic coast and now has a triplex, which he and Mom were able to enjoy many summers in Vodice, and which is where Vlasta, our beautiful sister, is right now. Where did all this strength of character and passion for Croatia come from? Jordy touched upon it. One of the harrowing stories we would hear during the war was when he was 9. Our grandfather, his dad, had left his family of 5 children in the night for fear of death because he was not a supporter of the communist regime. It was then that Dad at 9 and his 2 older siblings, 11 and I think they were 11 and 13, traveled north alone on foot for weeks to Vukovar to be under the care of their uncle. It wasn't until Dad came to Canada to learn English in 1969 that he reunited with his dad at the age of 32. So many years without a father. That contributed to the man that he was. The church in Vukovar also provided a refuge and support, which is where Dad developed his deep faith and why we include it in our donations in his honor. It was a terrifying journey, as you can imagine. Many tears flowed when Dad told us the story. As is recognized by many Croatians around the world who would read Dad's Facebook posts or listen to his radio program in the past, there was hardly anyone that loved his native country more than Dad and fought for the freedom of his people. There are so many other ways to describe Dad. He was physically strong. He even got a membership to Vic Tanny's in the 80s. His trainers, and he got trainers, his trainers would say to him, "John, you know everything. What are you paying me for?" He was proud. He was so proud of my mom, his wife, and of his family. Positive, he was always looking forward. He did not dwell on the past, but used it to fuel his passion and purpose. Dad was ambitious. He always wanted more for his family. He was an orator. If you were ever in his company, you knew he was the one talking. He was the one at the mic or telling the stories. And his legacy is in his grandchildren. His granddaughter Brittany is as hilarious, and his daughter Phil is as hilarious as he was. He was always having us in stitches. He would have a Viets, which is like a little joke, for absolutely every single situation that there was. If he was, talking about being in the supermarket, he had a joke for the supermarket. Like, it was kind of crazy how he had a joke for everything. When I think about him being the constant teacher, when I spoke to his doctor not that long ago, and I was saying, Dad this or Dad that, like when we were talking about his medications, his doctor said, he said, "I respect and admire your dad so much." He said, "I've learned stuff from him." I'm like, "Oh, he got to you too. Okay." So Dad was stubborn. You can't do everything you do with such passion without being stubborn. And that certainly has been bred through his children and grandchildren. Dad was always a leader, not only in the political arena, but when he had his company, I think it's fair to say, and Mom would say, he and Mom led that company with honesty, integrity. They were always fair. They were always doing everything for their workers. And I've heard many times, and they had always said that Dad was a reputable and honest man, and he would never, ever lead them astray or take advantage of them. He bent over backwards for his people. Dad would take charge. Things wouldn't be left behind. He would make sure all the I's were crossed and the T's dotted, or the other way around. His passion for everything was crazy. His nature, his love of nature. I remember when we were walking, Dad and I think last October, November, and it was windy out. And Dad said, I never was fearful of the wind and the storms. He said, the wind, God was telling me that I was alive, that I was present. Lucky to be here. Dad was a philosopher. When he was in hospital, as Phil said, when he was in hospital in November after the stroke, he, at first, when I said, Dad, when I came to the house, I said, Dad, I think you've had a stroke. He's like, no, what's that? And Mom's like, and then when he went to the hospital and he learned he had a stroke, he's like, oh, stroke. I've got to read upon this. I got to be the expert on stroke. So I got to get better. And so when he was in hospital, as Phil said, he didn't want a tablet or anything. The book that he asked for was a book on philosophy. So it was Greek philosophy written in Croatian. That's what Dad read in the hospital to keep his mind occupied. No TV. So generosity. Dad was generous. He was a risk taker. He moved to Canada for his family to make a better life, which he did. He absolutely did. A while ago, years ago, I was sitting on campus at Stanford University in 2001. I sat looking through these beautiful buildings, looking through the windows of the beautiful buildings. I was taking courses at Stanford. And I thought to myself, my dad grew up in the foothills of Bosnia. Here I am sitting in a classroom in Stanford. How is that possible in one generation? And that's when it really solidified to me what Mom and Dad did for us and the courage it took. The mountains they moved. Dad loved Mom. Dad was complicated. He dreamed about being at home. He begged the people in the hospital to let him home after the time in stroke, and even though it was early, he again was very stubborn and convincing, and they let him home to have a very nice Christmas with his family. And then he went back into hospital. Dad loved to contribute to everything that he could. He even, I forgot to mention, he even helped establish the Croatian library in Mississauga. He donated volumes of books, which we still have some more, even because he kept collecting them. He was a man of science. I remember him trying to help me with my math and chemistry in both high school and university. He clearly knew what he was doing. Unfortunately, the 1950s Croatian methodologies were a bit difficult for me to grasp. It's a bit frustrating at the time. And because he was a man of science and he was very practical, with my mom by his side and my sister Nina on the phone, and it was Nina's last-minute suggestion, we asked him if he'd consider donating his body to science, specifically the University of Toronto School of Anatomy. He said yes without hesitation. Mom said, "Are you sure? Do you understand what is being asked?" Dad said, "What do I care what is done with my body? This will help those students to learn." Our neighbor, Dee, is a tenured anatomy professor at the University of Toronto. When Dad died, I texted her to let her know what we were doing. I said, "Dee, my dad valued education as number one. It's so special to us that he gets to go to the best medical school in Canada at 85, probably the oldest student, and that he's going to be a teacher." Dee said to me, he will be some fortunate student's best teacher. So for Dad, this could not be more perfect. It was difficult for my mom because this is not the Croatian way, but it is the absolute right thing for Dad, and he wanted it. So it's so perfect that our dad, one of the smartest men we knew, who loved to educate people, whether they liked it or not, is now a most important teacher to several doctors of our futures. It was very brave of Dad to make this choice, considering Mom's concerns. And to be honest, Dad was always a trailblazer. So with that, I'd like to conclude my story of the life of Dad. I think everyone here has been touched by him in some way, which is why you kind of made it your mission to be here. And on behalf of our family, what can we say other than the wind will be behind us and in us. His spirit, it's visible in his grandchildren, in our extended families, and the people that we choose to be with us. It's all informed by the people around us, our parents most importantly. So I can't say much more than we love him, like so incredibly much, as complex as everyone is. He was definitely worthy of our love and respect and devotion. You can keep going. So downstairs is our reception. Please don't leave if you don't have to. We have more than ample food. And if you're lucky, maybe we'll even send you home with some. So yes, please join us downstairs and we can be more casual and just share our stories. But if you are leaving, thank you for coming.